Hi, I'm Ben. Welcome to Unpolished. I've been wanting to start a YouTube channel for a little while now, and the whole purpose of this YouTube channel is I want to talk about what it's like behind the scenes of the process of writing a novel, publishing a novel, being an author, and being a full-time dad, being a full-time high school teacher, trying to balance life and creativity. So this channel is for that. This channel is about me and about my opinions, about my advice, about things that I've learned along the way. And I hope to give you guys a really cool behind the scenes look at what it takes to write a novel, what it takes to stay motivated, and what it takes to actually get a book out there, get it into the world. So I thought what we'd start with is my journey to publication, how I actually came to write. And I'm sure over the next few years there's going to be a lot of enriching detail on this. I wasn't born in a vacuum, and everything that I experienced up until the point of starting to write obviously informed my writing, from reading Goosebumps when I was a kid to reading John Marsden for the first time to writing the short story in year 12 where I failed because it wasn't good. So there's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack, but I really want to start from where I actually picked up a laptop and started to set words down on paper. I moved up from Victoria in about 2008 to be with my girlfriend, who's now my wife. So, good decision, me. And when I did that, I actually left behind a band that I'd been a part of named Sounds Like Chicken. And I loved Sounds Like Chicken. I loved being in the band. I loved all the people in the band. It was a real family, it was a real creative, intimate family for me. And so when I moved up here and I started to do my degree in music at university, there were some people here who I connected with, but it was a little different. The family had gone, and I sort of wanted to do something different creatively. And so from the encouragement of my wife, I picked up a pen, or I picked up a laptop, and I started to write. So I wrote a short story, and I on the internet, how many words are in a short story? Where do you send short stories? What is a short story? And in those early fumbling beginnings, I wrote this thing. I sent it to a magazine, and in about 4 weeks, I got an email that they'd accepted my story, and I thought, you beauty, that's going to be easy. Jokes on me. It was not easy. It there follows 10 years of writing in a void. And I don't know whether that first thing was just a real encouragement to stay the course for the next 10 years or what it was. But it definitely was not as easy as I was expecting it to be. So there was a lot of writing and there was a lot of reading. There was a lot of writing bad prose, bad stories. I wrote 3 full-length novels in the span of about 5 to 6 years. Each one was progressively better, but none were great. The third one I liked. The third one I actually sent to agents and publishers, and I even entered it in the Vogel Award, which will come back a bit later in my story. But just no bites back on that one. So it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of effort to stay encouraged while you're writing these huge pieces of yourself. You put so much of yourself, and each time you write a new novel, it feels like this is the novel. This is the novel that's going to connect with people. This is it. I'm speaking straight from my heart. I'm doing exactly what I want, and people are going to respond. And so when they don't, it's crushing. It's so hard. Early on, I started to look at other authors, and I started to actually read about, authors who... So every time a new author was published, I would look up their age. And this is... I want this YouTube channel to be me unpolished. This is the name of the channel, and I want to actually present to you guys what it feels like, and just... I'm not a perfect person. I don't think any person is perfect. And I have a lot of ugly characteristics that I try to combat with good ones, but I'll share some of the bad ones. I used to compare myself a lot to established authors, and I would feel insecure and inferior and not as talented, and I would read their stuff and I would get jealous, like weirdly jealous. I looked up other authors' ages to gauge whether or not I was in the right level. So if the person was 45 years old, I was like, I still got time, I've got time. But if the person was younger than me, then I thought I've missed my shot, And I'd see all these other authors getting these deals and pictures of book launches and stuff. And I'd always feel really, jealous, weirdly jealous. And so just as a piece of advice for you guys, if you're still in that wilderness area where you're writing a lot and people aren't responding yet, I would say don't compare yourself to other people. Don't compare yourself to other authors. You guys are on whatever journey you're on, and whatever you need to do to express whatever it is that you want to express. It might take longer, it might be shorter, it might be longer. There's no one mold that an author needs to take, which is a huge thing that it took me a very long time to understand. Hopefully you guys are only a year into the journey and I can shortcut you and give you the shortcut to this knowledge, which is the beautiful thing about writing a novel is that each novel represents a unique person. And that's fantastic. We wouldn't want to have these cookie cutter books where everything's the same. And I think it's so special that whoever you are, you have a story to tell, you have something to offer. And whatever you capture in that prose is you. And you can't change the path of that. You can't look at someone else's journey and think like, oh, if only I did this, I could be like this. It's not the case. It's you, and you have to just sort of be at peace with that your journey is yours. So I would say that don't compare yourself to others when you're starting out. Now, while I was writing these novels, I was writing short stories, I was submitting things, and there were these really exciting moments of victory. So very early on, I had a short story accepted by a local Brisbane publisher, Tiny Owl Workshop, and Sue, she printed my horror story on napkins, and I'll put a photo in, and man, that was cool for Halloween. And I got to go and read from my horror short story, and it was on, went to the UK, and someone Instagrammed me from the UK. And all those little moments are just little treasures to buoy you up as you go on this journey. But my novels weren't connecting with people. They weren't, and at the time I thought they were the best thing I could do, but they weren't. And looking back on them now, I look at them with fondness, but they're rough. It took me a long time to practice this before I became any good at it. I did have a novella which was shortlisted for an award, which was amazing, by the Viva la Novella Prize from Caesar Online. And I mean, that was just again, it just buoys you up. It makes you feel like, okay, maybe I can do this. Maybe it's, it's getting a PB or something like that in the gym. Like, yes, okay, I can do this. I can do something. But the thing that I think is most important to take away from this is in that season, it feels like you're in the wilderness where you're not talking to anyone. You tweet an author and they don't respond, and you've got no clout and all that sort of stuff. I would say what you desperately need is something to sustain you through that. I would even go as far as to say, write it down. Write something down like a mission statement, which I don't like that word, mission statement, because it sounds like I'm a businessman. We're supposed to be creative people, but it's, write it down. Like, this is why I bother. I'm a Christian, and I won't get into that in great detail, but there's a lot of things that I want to offer through my writing, love and kindness and generosity, but also philosophy and asking big questions about, is this all there is in existence? And so I have a deep passion to connect with people on that level. That is why I write. That's what kept me going through those 10 years. It feels like a calling, to use that word. You need to find something like that. If the only reason that you're writing is to be published, you need to think about that. If the only reason that you're writing is to get money, you need to stop. because that's very difficult. The only reason you should be writing is whatever you write down, like that mission statement to say, this is why I bother. And so when those rejections, when you get those rejection slips, when people don't respond to you, when you feel like you're all alone and you're shouting in the wind and there's no one responding to this thing that you crafted and you put your heart out onto the paper and it's there and no one cares. To get through that, you need to have a reason to continue. So make sure that you know what it is. And so then we come to the exciting part of my journey. I got this idea for a novel. And all I had was a setting, and I set out to write it. And I wrote this thing in a flurry in like 5 months. And again, through the year, for however long I managed to upload these videos, I'll talk about my process. But I write very quickly in an effort to get to something authentic. I feel like instead of structuring it intellectually, if I can just come at it from my guts, from my heart, put that down, that's what I aim to do when I write. And so I wrote this thing, and through the 10 years in the wilderness, it definitely felt like I had changed my voice, because I'd changed it to something I thought was more palatable. And the first draft of this book looked like that. What I then did, after I went to see an author named Rowan Wilson. Rowan Wilson, one of my favorite Australian authors, but the way he writes is so interesting and engaging and unique to him. And I went and heard him speak about just his process and stuff, and it really woke me up to the idea, like, there is a thirst in Australia in literature for unique voices. Write how you want to write. I was writing how I thought people wanted me to write. And so then what I did was I had the first draft. So this is the screen. On this half, I had my first draft. This half, I had a blank page. And I literally typed the whole thing out from start to finish, from top to bottom. The whole thing out again. I changed tense, I added characters, I changed everything. Dialogue, it was just the bones that I kept. Loved the plot, and I added that. And then I submitted this to the Vogels. For those of you who aren't in Australia, the Vogel Literary Award is one of the prime prizes for an unpublished manuscript in Australia. And it's awarded every year by Allen and Unwin. And it's a really cool prize, and I was aiming at that. I did a bunch of edits. I submitted to that. And as I was doing this, as I was leading up to this, it was all sort of like a culmination point where I felt like all of who I was, not just my success or failure as far as being an author is concerned, but like my report card on being a human, like my worth. I put so much of myself in that book. When I submitted it, too much of myself. And so when I got a letter in the mail that my wife read over the phone to me, that said I did not get through. I did not win the Vogel Award. It was utterly crushing. It felt, not only was I not a success as an author, I wasn't a success as a human being. I was worthless, is how it felt. Which, I know is silly, but when you're in the midst of that sort of thing, I have sympathy for my old self there. When you're in the midst of that and you pour so much of yourself into a thing, it's hard to separate yourself from the emotion of success and failure. And it's just hard to have perspective, I guess would be a good way of putting it. And so, I felt crushed, but embedded in their feedback from the judges, which they didn't have to do. They wrote some lovely stuff, which, I'm a human, so I don't read the positive. I went straight to the one negative comment, which was, this novel, well, blah, 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 good, does not meet the levels of drama that it was aiming for. Something along those lines. And so I thought to myself, feedback. I got feedback from people who know what they're talking about. And I pored over my novel and I found all these different spots where I could add more drama. So, just as an example, there's a scene in the book where the young character does something he's really ashamed of, and it's a real low point for him, and he's walking along the beach, and all I had him do was walk along the beach and think about some bad stuff, and went back to his room. When I was heightening the drama, I had him run into the water, which he's previously been told is shark infested because it's on a whaling station, so there's lots of blood in the water. And I had him do that in an effort to harm himself because he felt so ashamed. That was just one instance, and I went through the whole novel and I heightened things. The ending completely changed, etc., etc. And then that was it. I don't know whether you've seen footage of the marathon runner who just gets over the finish line just by willpower, and just, you can see their limbs aren't working, nothing's really working well. And it's just, that was me. That was the last thing. And then I let it go. I sent it to a bunch of agents. Most agents say you don't multi-submit, which means you don't submit to multiple agents at once because they like to be the only one reading it, deciding and getting back. But I was done. I sent it to a bunch of agents and I was like, this is it. I'm done. And I let it go. And I think that letting go part was probably the healthiest thing I could have done. Because all that, what I was talking about, all that stuff about identity and who I was as a person and my value was so rooted in that process that I needed to let it go. And I think that was when doors started to open. And I'll never forget it. Driving home from work, I get an email on my phone, so I'm checking my phone, looking through my phone, and this email said, I'm this agent who, I love this book. Has anyone picked this book up yet? I want to represent it. One of the most exciting moments of my life was talking to that agent, and then in a few months, let's fast forward the narrative a little bit. Give me a sec. Yeah. Pretty cool, huh? It's difficult. I mean, hopefully it's in focus. It's difficult to describe what it's like. I've got some really cool photos of the process, and I'll probably do that in a different video, but just the feeling of holding this, this is 9-10 years of me in this. That's not nothing. And it feels like an accomplishment. It feels humongous, and having people read it and respond to it, it's just such a magic thing. It's everything. I mean, I'm making this video and I'm probably talking to a lot of people who aren't yet published, but man, it is worthwhile persevering. To have just even a single person talk to you about how it's affected them, how it made them feel more connected with their father, or talking about how there's, different types of masculinity, not everyone has to fit in the same box. All those things I actually care about are in here. And to have discussions with people who've read it and care about it so much, it's phenomenal. So that's me. I wanted to talk to you guys about what and how long it took, and just the journey to publication. Hopefully some of the things I've said have resonated with you. I really hope so. If you're still at it, if you're listening to this and you're a storyteller at heart and no one's listening to you, just keep persevering, keep pushing yourself. Don't be ashamed of what you're doing, and just really be proud of what you're doing. Celebrate the small victories for sure. So when those first things start to trickle in, just celebrate to the max, and just enjoy the journey, because every single step that you're taking right now is going to lead you, hopefully, to one day maybe doing this very thing yourself, which would be pretty incredible. I wanted to end off my videos with just sort of a what I've been reading, what I've been thinking about. I just went to a book launch last night. It was the final one for Robert Lucans's book, The Everlasting Sunday. Hang on. This book, Robert is a lovely bloke, generally. No, he is. He's really nice. But this book, man, this is a book. This is a book to read. This is the worst review I've ever done in my life of anything. This is a book to read. Of course it is. This is a very elegant, moving, subtle book. So it's something that I I found myself getting a little jealous. I love those books that set something up without you knowing it. And that's what he does. He's so sneaky. And yeah, I would totally recommend getting a hold of this. It's a quick read, but it's moving and poignant and disturbing and elegant and beautiful, and it's definitely worth grabbing a copy. Thanks, guys. Like, subscribe. I actually don't really know how YouTube works, but just do all the things. Share this with people. I'd love to start actually having conversations with you guys. Where are you at with your writing journey? Are you in the wilderness and not feeling much hope? Are you a success yourself? What would be success for you? So comment down below with all the things that I've mentioned. I'd love to hear from you guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.